In Jefferson County, and I want to just give you a few quick bits of election information at the top of the forum here. I recognize that you all are the folks who chose to be at a school board forum 6 weeks before an election on a Wednesday evening, so I probably don't need to be encouraging you to vote, and probably a lot of the information I'm giving you tonight is information you already know. Here's my challenge to you. You all can find 5 people who are maybe not regular voters, voting in even years but not odd years like this one. Maybe they are newer to Colorado and don't have all this information readily available. Maybe they're busy and aren't able to make it to a forum. Please remember this info, share it with them, make sure that we're spreading the word so we're increasing turnout here in Jefferson County. So 3 things I want to tell you, the 3 bits of information. When, another when, and where. The first when are you going to get your ballots? We start mailing your ballots on Friday, October 11th. You then have a weekend, you then have a mail holiday of Columbus Day, so you shouldn't expect them until later that following week, the week of the 14th. But we're mailing them out on Friday, October 11th. The second when do you need them to get them back to us by? Election Day is Tuesday, November 5th, and they're due at 7 p.m. And remember, postmarks do not count. So make sure if you're choosing to mail them in, that you're doing that. We recommend about 7 days before Election Day, the previous Tuesday, to ensure they get to us on time. But that brings me to the where. There are other options besides mailing, especially if you like taking your time. We encourage you to use the drop boxes or the vote service centers. And we're very excited to be announcing that this year we are dramatically expanding the number of drop boxes we have, especially here in Lakewood. Lakewood has for too long had one 24-hour drop box for a city of 150,000 people. That's crazy. We're adding 5 more this November. We'll be adding more before next November. But so you'll have 6 total places to vote in Lakewood if that's where you live, in many other places throughout Jeffco if you live outside of Lakewood. You'll have all of those election locations both in your ballot envelope and then also available on our website, votejeffco.com, votejeffco.com. That has all the information I just said, these key dates, these election locations. It also enables you to track your ballot there, to see election results. So this is the website I'd encourage you to send to 5 people to give them this info that you already know, you already have. Encourage them to vote and tell them where they can do it. Thanks so much for being out here. Thanks for helping us increase participation. Let my office know if you have any questions or run into any trouble. We want to make sure you're all participating. Thank you very much.
All right, I can't take my glasses. Now we'd like to thank our superintendent, Dr. Jason Glass, who will give you an update of the state of Jeffco schools.
Thank you, Shauna. Thank you, PTA, for hosting this. I'm Jason Glass, proud to be the superintendent here in Jeffco. I have a friend named Lisa Escarzaga, who for many years was the executive director of data and assessment research at Aurora Public Schools. And she told me a story about a superintendent that they had in Aurora a few years ago, who came fresh out of a military career, was a general, and assumed the position of superintendent of Aurora Public Schools. And in his first big meeting with the staff, there were 1,000 people that were there to hear this first address. So the general stood up and began the presentation, began working through his remarks. And the point he needed the PowerPoint to advance, he simply said, "Next," and nothing happened. So the general assumed that he had people that would sort of do that for him. That was a bad assumption at Aurora, at least. So we're going to recreate some of that now because we're dealing with some technology issues. And my computer is way back there in the back. And Tammy Schiff is in that dark room back there. Tammy's waving, but you can't see her. There she goes. So when I say next, something's actually going to happen. So bear with us and thank you for your patience. I'm delighted to be here to sort of kick this off and provide a flyover or a state of the district, really for the benefit of everyone here, but especially for our candidates. To hear from my perspective, what I think some of the challenges, some of the successes that we've had over the past couple of years that this board will have the opportunity to build on, the capacity that they will have, and some real challenges that I think this next board that is seated is going to have to deal with. So, next. So we'll start with the successes, and they really are born out of previous challenges that this community and this board faced. When I was hired as a superintendent in 2017, one of the challenges that the board had was there was an existing vision and strategic plan called Jeffco 2020. And the big idea behind Jeffco 2020 was to change the student learning experience in ways that allowed them to practice important skills like creativity, problem solving, collaboration, communication that prepared them for a complex world. For those of you that have worked in Jeffco for the past couple of years, this should sound very familiar because the ideas behind Jeffco Generations, which is the vision statement that we issued in 2017, build upon that. So it's a continuation of that. But in 2017, the concern really was, while this document idea existed, it really wasn't being implemented. So nothing that different was happening in classrooms, and people didn't really understand it, the community didn't really understand it. So we had to do a lot of work sort of lifting this big idea up and representing it in a way that we could act on it. A second challenge that we were faced with in 2017 is sort of flagging or lack of support from the staff about confidence in the organization and its leadership and the board and the direction, and the staff confidence in the direction of the organization. So the board was concerned about that, and they were concerned about the community's confidence in its schools, especially coming off the heels of an election loss in 2016, where both the bond and the mill levy had failed that year. At the same time, around the state, many other communities had passed theirs. So they were concerned that the community didn't have confidence in the district. And then the third was the board had some audacious and exciting goals that they wanted to accomplish. They knew that they needed resources to do. And we were having the problem of aging buildings and an increasing sort of pile up of deferred maintenance. And so the board was increasingly having to move money out of the operational side of the district's budget, which is how we pay for teaching and learning experiences and all the things that make school, and move it over into the capital side to address the deferred maintenance problem. So out of those three challenges, next slide, please. These three successes emerged. So the Jeffco Generations vision is something that if you talk to people within our schools, when I visit our schools, I see clear evidence of this being implemented and understood. People know what it means when we talk about change the student experience by changing the student task. T-A-S-K. The task is the moment where the teacher hands things over to the student, asks them to do the work or engage. We want to create experiences for our students that mirror the kinds of complex work that people have to do when they leave our schools, or create authenticity and by that I mean the work that students do in school has meaning and importance beyond just school. So rarely do we do work in isolation, only using one content area, and rarely in the important questions that we deal with is there one finite or concrete answer. And so we want to create those kinds of experiences that really prepare our students for the future, given that we've got this increasingly automated, interconnected global economy, and access to information is instantaneous and becoming even faster than instantaneous, whatever that is. And those trends are only going to keep accelerating. And so they challenge us as an education system to imagine how can we change the experiences our students have so that they're really prepared for the future. Our businesses have been telling us this need for some time. So that was the big ideas behind Jeffco Generation. So we have that vision and a whole communications plan around that, as well as a strategic plan designed to provide resources and action steps and measures associated with every element of that strategic plan. Next. So the second challenge that was turned into a success is sort of, do we have support and confidence of the staff, and do we have support and confidence of the community? A couple of data elements here. The first is a staff survey that we conduct in Jeffco every few years. You see data from 2015-16 and data from 2018-19, showing responses to questions such as, is the district open to new ideas? Are we managing change? Are we encouraging innovative solutions? Communicating information, communicating a clear vision, superintendent leadership, senior district leadership, budget alignment to district goals, and board leadership. And then below that, change in 2016 bond and mill levy election results from 2016 to 2018. So these are intended to show that if one of the goals was sort of winning hearts and minds of the employees and getting them excited about the direction of the district, we have some data to show that that has been successful. On the bond and mill levy, there's all kinds of things that go into winning or losing bonds and mill levies, timing of the election, what else is on the ballot. So I wouldn't say that everything between 2016 and 2018 was due to actions that we took. But school elections, bond and mill levy elections, and to a great degree, are a referendum on the district. And they are a referendum on confidence in the districts and the community's support for the district. And Jeffco is not an easy place to win. It's a community that's a third Republican, a third Independent, and a third Democrat. And it's a place with strong conservative values when it comes to fiscal management. So people want to be careful what happens with their money. But in this case, we're able to move the needle significantly. You can see the changes in percentages on those. Next. And then finally, this success is related to what we were able to do with that mill levy override and the bond campaign. The mill levy allowed the district to add even more to employee compensation. Now, I'm proud, and this board should be proud of the work that they've done to raise the salaries of our employees over the past 2 years. 19.37% is a great investment in our staff. But I also want to acknowledge, welcome to Colorado, that number is $20,000 to $30,000 too low to start with. So we know we've got work that we need to continue to do. But I think this is a strong investment that we've been able to show for our employees, and thank you, 5A, for helping make that happen. 2.67% of that increase was due to 5A. We were also able to dramatically expand mental health and school safety supports across the district. School safety officers, we were able to take our social emotional learning specialists from around 40 of those in the district. In the district, we moved them to 113 this year. More counseling supports, greater district dispatch and school safety supports. So a number of investments that were able to be put in place because of the mill levy override. Expanded career technical education. The most obvious form of that will be the building and the staffing of the Warren Tech South campus. And so those of you who don't live in the south part of the community may wonder what's in that for you. Well, the issue is that we have huge waiting lists at all that are 2 existing Warren Tech campuses. So this will take some of the pressure off them and allow more of our students to have those experiences. Warren Tech is an amazing, at least around the country, maybe a nationally renowned career technical education program. So the more students that we can have access to that, the better. And the expansion of career technical opportunities across the district. The one-to-one device initiative is largely financed through $5 and we were able to expand and improve our pre-K programs. This year we were able to add about 100 more seats for pre-K. Next year we think we'll be able to add about 100 more, so we're making good progress. That, along with full-day funding in kindergarten, really is allowing us to make a major investment early on in education. So these are some very positive things. Then on the mill levy side, I won't belabor that or go into too much detail on it. If you're interested in your particular school and the impact that it will have, if you go to the Jeffco Public Schools website, there's a green button right on the very front page. It takes you to another page called Jeffco Builds, and that has a great deal of detail around how much is going to each school, what the timeline is, what the investment is, and the specific investments that are happening in each building. The biggest argument that we have about the bond is that everybody wanted to be first. And this is a 6-year program, so we're going to have some patience, but we've already had some projects that have taken place. But the real dramatic changes will be happening now, starting this year and going forward. So we're excited about those. And so thank you for those of you who voted for 5A and 5B, and for those of you that didn't, that reside in Jeffco, you're paying for it too, so thank you. We appreciate that. So now shifting to 3 challenges. The first challenge this year is our CMAS growth data, and that it is lagging the rest of the state. So we're concerned about that, and we're taking some steps to mitigate it. The second thing that I want to talk about is, I know this is sort of a third rail, but enrollment shifts and questions or concerns around closures and consolidations and what do we want to do as a community about that. And the third is sort of ongoing political tensions that are present in Jeffco. I mentioned earlier that the district is a third Republican, third Independent, third Democratic. And those create some different values. In many cases, they're competing positive values. So we'll talk about those challenges. So shifting to the CMAS data, thank you. So this is just English language arts. We have math and the PSAT to SAT data as well. But you can see if you look at the 2019 column, numbers at 50 means that you're keeping pace with the state. If you're below 50, it means that your students are growing less in a year's time in the state. So you see we've dropped below 50 in several cases, and we're concerned about middle school especially, and then several subgroups we're concerned about as well. So when you get achievement data, you get the data, but you don't really know what is causing this. So we have to explore some hypotheses about why. Next, please. So when we talk to our principals and our staff and examine the work that we have been doing in Jeffco, we really have been emphasizing the importance of authentic experiences, right? So things that have currency and meaning and connection to work and life outside of school. And those experiences are not necessarily the same as the things that you do and the experiences you have on an assessment or a standardized test. And so our hypothesis is for change is that through the process of implementing authentic tasks, we lost some touch with our connection to content standards. And thank you. So I want to show you just a few models or ideas that are all rooted in this idea of deeper learning, authentic experiences, meaningful, engaging experiences for students. The first one is from a book that I provided all of the candidates here. You've got some light reading to get through to learn some more about some of the inspirations that we have for the direction that we're taking. This is from John Mehta and Sarah Fine's most recent book, In Search of Deeper Learning. And they talk about this deeper learning taking place at the intersection of what they call mastery, creativity, and identity. So it is our belief as a district that we overemphasize the authenticity and lost that connection to the content knowledge. But if you look at this model here, under mastery, content knowledge is the very first concept that's listed. So when you design authentic experiences, it has to be rooted back in academic content standards. Next, please. So similar model, this is from the Buck Institute, which is sort of an international, recognized international expert nonprofit on problem and project-based learning, which is what we'd like to see more of in student tasks, problem and project-based learning. So in the center of that, you have this sort of learning goals, and key knowledge is the first thing. You read about what they mean by key knowledge, and you need content standards. And you go back and think about within math, reading, writing, science, and you the content standards that students are working on. The experiences should track back and be aligned to those. Next, please. And again. So this is expeditionary learning, English language arts curriculum. We have a few expeditionary schools in the district, one of them Pennington Elementary. Peak at Pennington, it's now called, is a relatively new expeditionary learning school. It had the third highest growth improvement in the state. So we hold it up as an example of where we see authentic or deeper learning taking place and a deep connection to content. You see in the English language arts curriculum and here in the science curriculum, and we go through all of the curriculum documents, you see this important block around content-based. So again, that model is tracking back. And then in the International Baccalaureate Learner Profile, the second one down the left side is knowledgeable. That all tracks back to this content, factual information. Next, please. And here, this one may look familiar. It's Leaves of Our Tree from the 2017 Jeffco Generations document. The very first one on the left is, of course, content mastery. So the work that we have before it, next, please, is, first of all, avoiding some false dichotomies. We often hear that there is this tension between sort of traditional standard and delivered teaching techniques and authentic, hands-on teaching techniques, and that you have to choose between one or the other. So just a couple of quotes to attack that as I think a false dichotomy, because I think we have to have both. We have to have students that have deep content knowledge, and we have to have students that can create, design, solve complex problems, adapt to changing conditions. We have to have it all. our students need it. So here's a quote from E.D. Hirsch from the Common Core Standards Defense. It was published in the Washington Post in 2013. E.D. Hirsch was the author of the Core Knowledge curriculum, which is a very sort of traditional, hierarchical, direct instruction focused curriculum. And E.D. Hirsch said, children have a lot of things to learn about the world, past and present. They need to learn some things as efficiently as possible through direct instruction. But they also need opportunities to explore through well-constructed spaces and activities that invite creative problem solving and role playing. So here, E.D. Hirsch talking about the importance of doing both. And then sort of a local thinker on this matter, Weston Kieschnick wrote a book called Old School. Weston is a speaker with HMH, and he travels around the country talking about improving education. He's talked about direct instruction. Direct instruction, again, is when someone is standing up and delivering instruction in front of the classroom. So direct instruction isn't a bad thing. The research tells us that. Direct instruction has a powerful effect size in terms of getting kids to acquire content knowledge. Direct instruction isn't a bad thing. The research tells us that. Direct instruction becomes a bad thing when it is the only thing. So think about the experiences that you had in class where somebody was just every day standing up and delivering a lecture. And we have to beware of false solutions as well. So the first is this sort of tension between neighborhood schools and charter schools and option schools, and the argument that we get that the governance type of the school is what matters. We need more of this school or less of this kind of school. So we looked at, in our growth data, the top 10% of schools and the bottom 10% of schools. So this is sort of an outliers analysis. And we looked at neighborhood schools, charter schools, option schools, and tried to tell, is there any trend in this, right? So you look at this and it's sort of clear as mud, right? There's really a mixture across both. And then there's sort of this false dichotomy we have to explore, or false solution, next please, around is it better to have a traditional instructional model or a more constructivist or what's sort of hands-on model? So we looked at, again, the top 10%, top bottom percent, 10%, looking at traditional, constructivist, and hybrid. And again, clear as mud, right? So what this tells me, my inference from this, is there's more than one way to get at this sweet spot of deep content knowledge and deeper learning. There's more than one way to screw it up, too. Next. So I think when we think deeply about this shift, this profound shift that we're seeking to bring about in our schools, really preparing our kids for a complex, lightning fast, interconnected, globalized, automated world, we're in this space of transitioning from cognitivist to a constructivist frame. And so just to walk you through some of the wonkiness of this. When schools were public schools were first created, they were in response to an industrializing world. So businesses needed people who would show up on time, punch in, and repeat and repeat and repeat. Okay, so school was created to teach those kinds of skills. And that goes back to this behaviorist response. Around the 1920s to the 1950s, when the sort of Sputnik scare happened, we saw this rapid ascendance of the cognitivist approach. In other words, the routines of school were not just enough to teach. We also needed kids to memorize and acquire all kinds of information, hang on to that in college. So that was this cognitivist frame. And most of us grew up in schools that were in that cognitive realm, right? We were memorizing information that we could then bring back and use, usually in some kind of standardized measure. And now we're shifting into this constructivist phase, knowledge construction. So can we acquire skills and transfer them into different circumstances or conditions that are dynamic and changing? So I think the danger here is that we think it has to be one or the other. Again, I don't know, this is a false trichotomy maybe. All three of them are important. Right? We need kids that can show up on time, that can follow through, that have routines. We need kids that have deep content knowledge, and we need kids with transferable skills. Next, please. So our response is what we call the Jeffco learning model. This is being implemented now. Planning aligned to content standards, teaching by creating authentic and meaningful, engaging learning experiences for students, assessments that are both authentic and aligned to Colorado academic standards, and then a process of reflection or looking at data and then adapting based on the data. Next, please. Okay, shifting gears. These enrollment shifts show from 2014 to 2018, sort of the district going from 86,500 down to 84,600 last year in the number of enrollment. Jeffco had a high water mark of about 90,000 kids at one point. If you look ahead in 2019 and going forward, you see sort of a stabilization of that, so that's what we're expecting to happen. But one of the things that's happened from that high water mark of 90,000 kids and families moving around to different parts of Jeffco, some communities growing rapidly, some of them aging, and families moving out, is that we have a heck of a lot of small schools. So we have 18 schools with fewer than 250 students in them, and we have 8 schools with fewer than 200 students in them. Now, this is a sort of political third rail, I know. But I think this next forward is we're going to have to decide as a community, do we want to do anything about that? Right now, we are using dollars from larger schools to subsidize smaller schools, and we can continue to do that. There's certainly a value in small community neighborhood schools and keeping them alive. And these decisions when it comes to closing schools are not just about square feet and building efficiency and FCI scores and enrollment and the finance side of the equation. Schools are always the heart of the community. And so these are emotional connections, especially in a place like Jeffco that has schools that are decades old and all kinds of family connections. But I think going forward as a community and as a board, we're going to have to talk about this and decide what is going to be our response to it. And the status quo is an option, but we need to talk through. And then finally, these political tensions that are present in the country, this increasing polarization that seeks to divide people, create us versus them groups, this versus that group. These things are present here in Jeffco as well. And there are competing, I would say, positive values. When you think about something like school choice versus community schools, there are positives to both aspects of that. So how do we find the middle path? When we think about content knowledge or acquiring factual information versus authentic experiences, those are both positive values, and both things that we want for our kids. So I think our challenge going forward, that this board and our community has to deal with, is how do we lift public education out of sort of ideological ditches and find a way, find a middle path where everybody in the community can come together and support our public schools, because the success of our public schools, in great extent, factors into the success of our community. So, next slide. And the last thing I will say is just a word of reverence for the candidates tonight. This is an unpaid position, as Sean said, and it comes with wrestling with the very deepest, most important, most difficult questions that we have to decide as a school district. And so we're grateful, candidates, that all of you have stepped up and go through this experience to vie for one of these positions. It is an honorable thing that you do, and we're grateful for it. I'm also grateful to just have spent some time with you. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing the candidates' remarks.
Moderator for the forum will be Mr. David Thomas. A little about Mr. Thomas. David is a product of Jeffco Public Schools, having attended Slater Elementary, Manning Junior High, and Golden High School. He's also a graduate of Phillips University in Enid, Oklahoma, and CU Law School. A longtime advocate for public education in Jeffco schools, he was elected to the Jeffco Board of Education in November of 2007, where he served for 4 years, 2 as president of the board. Additionally, Mr. Thomas has served in elected office as district attorney for Jefferson and Gilpin counties, where he served for 12 years, and was appointed Executive Director of the Colorado Department of Public Safety for 6 years under Governor Roy Romer. He has spent the last 12 years as a criminal defense attorney. Mr. Thomas continues to advocate for and support our public schools, as evidenced by his participation this evening as moderator. Many thanks to Mr. Thomas for his service. Finally, a note about structure. We asked for questions from the community for the candidates in advance, and we so appreciate the wonderful questions you all submitted. There were more than 50. Those questions have been organized and will be asked by our moderator, Mr. Thomas. You're not going to answer 50 questions, I promise. Mr. Thomas will direct the questions to the panelists. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the question. Candidates, please look to Mike in the front row. Mike will signal to you with a slow sign when you have 30 seconds remaining, and with the stop sign when your time is completed. Please stop talking when your time has ended. This season, 2 seats are up for election, District 3 and District 4. Our candidates tonight are, say them slowly, please wait, Stephanie Schooley.
Oh, sorry. Please wait. I'm like, yes, I will.
And Robert Applegate. That's District 3. District 4, Joan Chavez-Lee and Susan Miller. We will begin the forum with introductions by each candidate. Without further ado, Dave, take it away.
Make sure I know how to, well, I don't know if they can hear me or not.
The side, you want to turn it on to the side.
It is green.
There.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Just for members of the audience, the forum is going to take about 1 hour because we're going to have strict time limits here. I'm going to make sure everybody adheres to the time limits. This is not a debate. This is a public forum for all of us to get to know the 4 candidates. The order of speakers will rotate, so each one will have an opportunity to go first, second, third, and fourth. I will be using, like in school, I will be using last names because I don't know any of the 4 candidates personally, and I don't know well enough to use the first names. So it was only later when I got out of high school that I realized that teachers actually had first names. I will announce the order before I ask each question so that you will all know the order in which I'm going to do those, which will help me so that I'll try and announce the names, but in the event that I need to be corrected, you'll correct me. We're going to start with introductions, and each of you have 2 minutes, and the order will be as follows. Ms. Schooley, and if I mispronounce your name, correct.
Got it.
Correct me. Mr. Applegate, Ms. Chavez-Lee, who's next to me, and Ms. Miller. That's the order in which we'll go. Ms. Schooley, you're on. 2 minutes.
Hello. Is it on? No. What about, it's a red light, so it says no. Am I incompetent? At the microphone?
All right.
Good. Keep a second delay.
Oh, now I'm used to it. Just let me struggle through it. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Stephanie Schooley, and I'm running for Jeffco School Board for District 3. Running for the Board of Education is really the culmination of lived experience that has really translated a core value for me, which is educational equity, into action over the course of my life. I come from sort of a diverse educational background. I'm the product of Montessori for my early childhood, and then went into neighborhood schools for elementary school, and then was part of the desegregation effort and was bused across town for middle school and high school. I'm the first generation in my family to go to college, except that I missed it by 2 weeks because my mother, my sister, and I all graduated from college in the same month. So it was a family affair for us to have the opportunity to go to college and get our degrees. I ended up going to the University of Denver and have a graduate degree in conflict resolution based on work that I did in Denver public schools when I was working there as an AmeriCorps and then as a paraprofessional. And seeing the level of conflict at that school over the course of 3 years really encouraged me to think deeply about What are the ways in which our community's voices are included in district level decision making? How do we make sure that equity is present and at the table when we're making big decisions that affect the lives of tens of thousands of children? My advocacy at the school level has included my kids' school at Stover Elementary and Everett Everett Middle School. Sorry, she's not elementary school anymore. And I've worked in the nonprofit and higher education sector for the past 20 years, training faculty on how to create authentic tasks for their students and really creating engaged learning experiences that help students, regardless of their discipline in academic studies, connect to the world around them and make their lives meaningful and their education matter.
Mr. Upton?
Let's slow it in 30 seconds.
As low as 30.
Do you need sunglasses?
I guess so.
At least we can read our notes now. Somebody has such a.
So start with time. Okay. Thank you to the Jeffco PTA, and thank you everyone that is here tonight. My name is Rob Applegate, and I'm running for Jefferson County Board of Education. I have 2 kids in Jeffco schools. My oldest went through Welchester Elementary and is now in the ISTEM program at Bell Middle School. And my younger son is in his 2nd year at Norma Anderson Preschool, so I'll be invested in Jeffco schools for many years to come. I was raised by a single mom who worked 2 jobs, sometimes leaving for work before I was up, and often coming home after I had fallen asleep. I started working at 14 and wasn't sure that I was going to go to college, but fortunately found the Colorado School of Mines, where I earned an undergrad in engineering physics and a PhD in applied physics. With that background, I know how to do research, look at all sides of issues, and come up with the best solutions. I served as a watchdogs coordinator at my son's school, was a member of the PTA, and served on the Golden Schools Foundation, a nonprofit organization that supports golden area schools. With Stover being my neighborhood school also. I was upset when the district lifted the moratorium on school closures. Pleasant View Elementary, a golden area school, was the only school that was closed last time. It was a Title I school with over 65% free and reduced lunch in a less affluent area than some of the other schools that were up for closing at the time. In a community where stability may be hard to come by, Pleasant View was a foundation there. Some of the parents were in similar situations as my mom was when I was a kid, and would not have been able to take off work to go to the rallies to save the school. I will always seek balance and will work to gather input from all stakeholders, the community, educators, administrators, support staffs, students, parents, and the 70% of Jefferson County households that don't have any kids in the school system. All voices are important and add value, and I'm asking for your vote, so please vote Rob Applegate this November. Thank you.
Sherry Snoop?
Do I wait 15
Give it
seconds?
just a second. Try it.
Great. Hello, my name is Chavez Lee, and I'm running as a candidate for the District 4 School Board position. I am the product of second generation immigrant family. Both my parents, I'm from Los Angeles, and both my parents were able to go to college. My dad, using the GI Bill, as I imagine many grandparents here or fathers did also, graduated from USC in Los Angeles. And my mom, after she graduated from high school, she was bilingual. Her first language, even though she was born here in Colorado, was Spanish. She was sent to Mexico City to go to school so she could come back and be academically bilingual in two different languages. I thought that was wonderful. I have been a teacher, a principal, a Jeffco parent, and now I'm a really proud Jeffco grandparent. I believe I have the skills necessary in terms of what I've done with my career to be a really good asset to the Jefferson County School Board. I first got involved with Jefferson County Schools in 1987 when my daughter, Rosa, started kindergarten at Mulholland Elementary School. The t-shirts they wore said, Class of 2000. It was a long time ago now. At that point, I was a single mom with 2 small children. And I learned quickly what a quality education is. as well as how important community connections are with the school in your area or the school you choose your child to go to. I'm a strong believer in public schools. I know that Jeffco has a history of really working to solve problems within each school and providing choices for our parents and kids. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Susan Miller, and first of all, I'd like to thank PTA for hosting this event. It's great to be with fellow PTA volunteers. I'd like to briefly tell you about my background and why I'm running for Jeffco School Board. I began my career in finance at Standard & Poor's, where I rated bonds. I moved to banking and today work for a firm that advises school districts across the country on enrollment, facility planning, financing, project management. But my most important job is as a mom. I have 4 children navigating Jeffco schools, Kiffin Elementary, Creighton and Evergreen Middle, Lakewood and Wheat Ridge High Schools. And like all of you, I volunteered. I chair the Wheat Ridge High School Accountability Committee and continue to serve on that committee now. I was president of its PTSA and I served on numerous district committees. For 6 years, I was the president of Jefferson Association for Gifted Children, where we engaged in nonpartisan, evidence-based advocacy for gifted and twice exceptional special education students at the local and state level. There are 3 main reasons I'm running for school board, but now for one, I would like just to talk about one of them. So let me ask you all a question. How many of you worry about how well our schools are preparing our children to succeed in the 21st century economy? Today, every parent I know is worried about this. Jeffco's achievement results clearly show we could do a better job meeting this challenge. Here's one example. They say that up to 3rd grade, students are learning to read, and after that, they're reading to learn. But in Jeffco last year on the CMAS, 75% of 3rd graders eligible for free and reduced didn't meet state literacy standards. If you can't read well, it's hard to keep up. It's also extremely hard for teachers to change a student task. But we can do better, and I've seen it done right here at Jeffco, at Wheat Ridge High School, where about 50% of the students eligible free and reduced lunch delivered outstanding achievement growth and had innovative career technological programs. So don't tell me it can't be done. If you elect me, I'll have a laser focus on improving achievement results for all kids in the 21st century. Thank you.
About Jeffco school issues. Mr. Applegate.
So, I'll just repeat the question somewhat a little bit. What would I do as a board member to make sure that the community understands and knows what we are spending our money on and how it is being spent? I think the district does a very good job right now as far as showing what the money is spent on. If you actively look for that, you can find out where the money is going. What they aren't doing a great job of, that I think needs to be improved on, is how effective is that spending. When you spend the money on a certain new program or something like that, how well has that program worked? Ultimately the board has to be good stewards of the finances and needs to show that the money is being effectively used in the school district. In addition to that, as I've tried to lay out in my opening speech here, but I'm a truly independent candidate here. I'm happy to speak to anyone on any side of any issue. Just as happy to go to a Republican luncheon as a Democrat luncheon or a school union meeting, as well as the anti-faction groups in the community, anti-union factions in the community. So as a board member, I will actively go out into the community and host town halls and seek the input of the community and try to explain what the school district is doing and how we are being good stewards of your finances.
Hello, is it back on? I don't know if this is gonna work. Oh, there it is. Okay. We're gonna work together better on the microphone in a second. This is a great question. I have spent the last 20 years of my life working in higher education and in a nonprofit organization. And really the sort of core function of my work is around addressing the negative value proposition of higher education and why we should publicly fund and support higher education, what it means for communities. That translates directly into thinking about how we talk to the public, how we talk to folks that have kids in Jeffco schools and the 70-ish% that don't have any affiliation with our schools, about why it's so important that schools educate more than employees. They educate voters, they educate civic leaders, we educate elected officials and volunteers, etc. In order to build community support for public funding, I think we need to share more stories about the narrative of what well-educated and whole-educated children do for our communities when they walk out of our schools, when they graduate. From early childhood through their graduation date, we need to have all children see their future, whether it's through college or career or community readiness. And we can provide those pathways, but we need to share those stories with our community members and demonstrate to them the impact, not just of having a school in your neighborhood because of the property values, or not just the test scores and what that means for our students, but what are we doing to increase critical thinking skills? How are we teaching our students to be good members of our society and help us prop up this democracy that we love so much?
Thank you. I think there are two parts to the financial question that you've asked. One is the student-based budgeting component, which is directly in the school, and then the other is district-wide. So touching first on the school student-based budgeting, I believe that decisions really do need to be made at the local school level, because that is exactly where the administration and the teachers know, along with the parents, what needs to be done in that school and how best to affect those outcomes for those students. So if more dollars need to be going into literacy, then it behooves the accountability committee and the principal to be directing those dollars to literacy. So I really believe that the student-based budgeting has been effective for principals and staff and parents to really understand what's going on in their schools and how to affect change and how dollars can be directed for those purposes. The other side is the district spending. We have $1 billion budget approximately, and every year we sit back and argue over $35 million and how we're going to allocate those $35 million to the different targets or the different buckets that have been decided that that's where those dollars need to go. And my firm belief is that we need to be looking at $1 billion budget every year and how are those dollars being spent and are we getting a return on our tax investment. So just to give you an example, we spend quite a bit of money on professional development. We really have no idea how much we spend, but a study that was done called the Mirage Study suggested that large districts spend about $18,000 per teacher. And if we were to say Jeffco spent that money on its 4,700 teachers, that's about $89 million. What could we actually do with $89 million? That could go to salaries for teachers. That could go to other SELs or psychologists. We need to be thoughtful about where we're spending all of our dollars. Thank you.
Yes, we do need to be thoughtful, but I do know, being a former teacher as well as principal, that teachers are continuous learners and want to get better at their craft every day. And that's what professional development does for teachers. It makes them better at educating our kids. The way I translate the question is really, how is our community getting the message around our budget in Jeffco? It's a huge budget. We know how big the district is. We know how many schools. So I would take it down to really how are each school site, what is being done each school site to make sure that the community understands how that budget affects there's kids in the school site itself. For an example, I would, as a principal, really think about doing a lot of outreach into the community, but really taking those budget items and asking for help from central admin around how does this translate to my school? How does it translate to my school? They did it really well. I believe it's still available to look at the bond issue and to find out exactly how it translates to each school, but yet I've asked some principals around that and they're kind of not sure. And I just think that it was such a celebration that those kind of things need to be uplifted. And so that I think that so that the community members have confidence that that we care about each school in our district and we're doing things to make it better for the kids in each district, each school site.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For our next question, the order will be Ms. Miller, Ms. Shaughnessy, Mr. Applegate, and Ms. Schooley. Question, do you believe education in Colorado has the funding it needs? Ms. Miller.
Well, that's the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it? Right now, we have the challenge before us called the Gordian knot, which is Gallagher and Tabor, and that certainly has put all of us on pins and needles about really how we go about funding our schools. And the formula is not adequate. We have some districts that are actually very well-to-do that are not paying their share, shall we say, and that there are other districts that are actually at their max on their mill levies and are strapped for finances. So I think we need to be looking at really how we turn around the school finance formula, how we actually allocate resources fairly across all districts to eliminate the Gordian knot, as I said, which is the Tabor-Gallagher problem, and have a conversation really about what dollars truly are therefore available, where everybody is sharing those revenues, and then start to talk about what incremental adjustments need to be made.
I do not believe that the funding in Colorado is at the measure it needs to be. It's incredible to me to learn that in the 1980s, our per pupil funding was above national average. It was. And now it's about $2,700 below per pupil average compared to the rest of the nation. And more dramatically, $8,000 less than in Wyoming, our neighbor. $4,300 less than our neighbors in Nebraska. For us to keep a high-quality teaching force, we need to fix this problem. We know that teachers don't make enough money to be able to afford decent housing in some of our communities. It's not fair. We need to fix that because we all understand how important education is for our community. Making trade-offs in existing budgets doesn't necessarily mean it's going to solve the problem. Inadequate funding is just that, and it needs to be corrected.
Mr. Applegate?
So the question. So the question was if Colorado is adequately funded, and I mean, honestly, there's never enough money for everything that we want to do, and as a school board member, I can't go out and raise money directly for the schools. I can donate to the PTA, I can work with a PTA person, and I can help out my local school, but it's not like I can go and, force the voters to pass another bond or a bill or a different proposition. So as a board member, what I can do is make smart budgeting decisions, make sure that the teachers are getting adequately compensated when they had to take a pay cut, or not really a pay cut, but a hiatus on raises for 4 years. That sucks, and that wasn't good for them. Making smart budget decisions as a board member is something you can do to make sure something like that doesn't happen again. And with all the economic indicators pointing to another recession, it's looking like even if more funding might be coming, it might be coming at a slower rate than we were expecting. So as a board member, making those smart budget decisions is what I would be doing and what I would have to do.
It's a fear factor. So to me, budgets are a statement of values. When we create a budget, we fund things that are important to us. I think in a state like Colorado that consistently appears on the top of lists nationally for wealth, we should at least hit the median for K-12 education funding. Within a state that consistently appears toward the bottom of the list nationally for per pupil funding and for teacher pay, we should work tirelessly to collaborate with and advocate
for or among our elected officials to make the case for why K-12 funding is so critically important for the economic and civic health of our state.
Thank you. Our next question in the order will be Ms. Chavez Lee, Ms. Miller, Ms. Schooley, and then Mr. Applegate. The question is, with the appointment of Betsy DeVos to Education Secretary, there has been a strong shift in favor of privatizing public education under the guise of choice. The tools being promoted in this effort include vouchers, ESAs, which are educational savings accounts, tax credits, and choice scholarships. Tell us what school choice means to you. Ms. Chavez Lee.
Well, first of all, I want to say that I'm not in favor of vouchers or neo-vouchers. We are already, as I stated earlier, underfunded, and to take money away from our school district in that way is, I don't believe is okay. Definitely, Colorado in the Constitution has states that you cannot use our public funded education monies to, let's say, religious schools, those kind of things. So I think that could happen sometimes with vouchers, so I just think that we need to really focus in on our schools within our district. So we talk about choice. Every parent has a choice in where they're going to send their kids in our district. And those choices are community schools, they are option schools, they are charter schools. I believe that there are tons of different schools in our district that allows parents to make choices to find places that might better fit their child and their educational experience. It's amazing to me that we have that much choice, and when I think about it, we're lucky to live in a school that includes JCOS, Jefferson County Open School. That's where I chose my daughter in. That was the best place for her. We're great to have Patterson International School. You know, that's great. We're great to have the program at Wheat Ridge, the STEM program at Wheat Ridge High School, the dual language program at Foster Elementary, and to have our own Waldorf charter school at Mountain Phoenix. So I believe we have plenty of choices. We can always do better with that.
Well, under Colorado law, we are allowed to choice, right? We're allowed to go to those schools that we believe that our children will have the best fit. And in Jefferson County, approximately 40% of our parents choice. They choose to go to their local school. They choose to drive down, as I did, from Genesee to 3 different schools down the mountain. They choose to come from Arvada to Lakewood. They choose to go to charter schools. They choose open schools, as Joan had mentioned. So we have a lot of choice, and that's beneficial. And that is under our state laws. And I support our state laws, and I support parents' right to choose where they want to send their children. And Jefferson County affords us great opportunities in our charter world, in our option world, as well as in our actual neighborhood schools. And so I am a huge supporter that parents, all 40% of us, continue to have that right.
Thanks. School choice, to me, means providing diverse public education opportunities for the various learners that we have in this district. It does not include privatizing public education.
Mr. Evans.
Very short and sweet.
Say what you mean.
We're right on time.
We're getting out of here tonight, kids.
So, as a treasurer of the Colorado Military Academy, which is a charter school down in Colorado Springs that I serve on, I understand charter schools, and I send my kids to neighborhood schools, so I understand neighborhood schools as well. But school choice, okay. School choice means letting parents who know their children more than anyone else decide what's best and what's the best type of education for their child. Equity and choice is really what needs to be addressed. It's that some parents that might want to send their kids to a school might not be able to get them there, whether they've got job commitments that they can't work around, things like that. So ultimately, school choice still needs to mean that you have an amazing education no matter where your students end up, whether it's their neighborhood school or a charter school or an option school or any of the other options. Thank you.
The order for our next question would be water. Mrs. Cooley first, Mr. Applegate, Ms. Miller, Ms. Shevesley. Question is, not every student comes to school with the same background and resources. What strategies would you employ as a board member in partnering with the district and community to ensure equity so all students have the opportunity to reach their full potential? The school.
That's okay. We're just gonna wait, I'll talk until it comes on.
But it's not. This is a critically important question around educational equity, and I think that there are a whole lot of, there's an exploration that needs to go into this with a lot of stakeholders at the table so that we can figure out how to begin addressing some of the opportunity gaps that exist in our schools. A couple of examples of things that I would love to focus on. One is a focus on early childhood education and the investment in early childhood experiences, how those students then are able to show up when they start kindergarten, first grade, and move through their academic experiences. That research is overwhelmingly demonstrates that early childhood and kindergarten are keys to success, particularly for students that are coming from backgrounds, particularly poverty backgrounds. The other thing I would say is there are examples of community-based efforts, collective impact efforts that have been successful in other places. One, I used to live in Portland, Oregon, and it's called Raise All Hands Raised. It's All Hands Raised. Where they brought together civic leaders, nonprofit organizations, K-12 schools, higher education, really an open invitation. Anyone from cradle to career who has an interest in making sure that there's educational equity along that continuum was invited around the table to say, what can each of us do individually? What can each of us do within our organizations? What are the benchmarks that we need to be looking at to be able to tell if we're successful and be able to measure our progress as we go along? And I would love to see something like that for our Jeffco.
Could you repeat the question?
Sure. Not every student comes to school with the same background and resources. What strategies would you employ as a board member in partnering with the district and community to ensure equity so all students have the opportunity to reach their full potential?
So first I'd like to echo what Stephanie said about early childhood education. I was fortunate enough to put both of my boys into Norma Anderson Preschool, Jeffco Preschool, and give them kind of a head start going into kindergarten, and not all children have that same ability. But ultimately, when it comes around to making sure that children have equity in their education across the district, with over 85,000 students, ultimately it comes down to finding what works best in different classrooms. Sitting on the Golden Schools Foundation, we have 5 elementary schools in that articulation area, 4 now, but you would look at a school like Welchester Elementary, which is a Title I school, which had lower than...
You're good to go.
Okay, great, thank you. So the wonderful thing about Jefferson County, The wonderful thing about Jefferson County is that it does have a phenomenal number of organizations that care about their children and work with the foundation, Jefferson County Foundation, and have outreach efforts throughout the community. But I also believe that there are examples across the country that we can look to where there is abject poverty in certain areas, or poverty, where people go home, they have one meal and 2 meals, but they need food over the weekends. And I think we look to the backpack programs here in Jefferson County as an example where we're able to help families over the weekend sustain and have been fed. But that's still not really enough, because that doesn't really help those children walk in to be learning on Monday morning if they're hungry, and if they haven't slept, or if their mom and dad isn't at home, one of them is in jail, and they're bouncing from parent to grandparent to friend to someplace else. And we saw that in high schools where my children attended. We saw that in middle schools where the children matriculated to Wheat Ridge High School, and we saw it at Stevens Elementary. And I think that being able to look at wraparound systems like Springfield, Massachusetts, how did they do it? How did they put best practices in place where they were able to bring community organizations together and put in place a strong safety net that supported all children? And we can also look to places down in New Mexico where blue ribbon committees, where over 95% of the children were at risk, but those became blue ribbon schools. So we can look here at Jeffco for our services that can be helpful, but I think we can also look elsewhere for best practices.
So this is something that's near and dear to my heart, being a teacher and also a principal at high poverty schools. I live in the mobile home area, and I think probably have the highest percentage of free and reduced lunch at maybe 95%. So when I've seen it work really well is when a lot of things come together that support children, but also support parents. For an example, the health clinics. The health clinic at Rose Signs, been there for many, many years. We had at Mole Home a food bank there on site that was helped by teachers, but also community members, so that the school itself becomes a community hub for families. It's a place to go, it's a place where families feel safe in an environment where they know people are there to help them. But there's a lot of service organizations also that are really important to our schools. As a member of the Kiwanis Club of Wheat Ridge, we help to provide, well, all the Kiwanis clubs, help to provide additional school supplies. It's not a big thing, but it's not a huge thing, but it's the little things that count. Hello? Okay. So, for an example, after the kids come back from holidays, we deliver school supplies to the most needy schools in the district. So, it's really that combination of those things, like having Jefferson Center for Mental Health therapists on site that can help kids. We have to really think about what their needs are and how much growth needs to happen, and work together to do that. And believe me, it needs to be more than just 1 year's growth for kids who are already behind. So everything needs to be thoughtful and purposeful in what's being done.
We're going to do a quick turnaround here because the order for the next question is Ms. Yevers-Lee, Ms. Miller, Mr. Applegate, and Ms. Schooley. We're just going to go down the line. The state of Colorado has required ICAP program, and Jeffco has some amazing career and technical education programs. What other opportunities would you like to see in Jeffco for students and families to explore post-graduation pathways, and what would you change to engage families in this work?
I think some of the discussion that needs to go on is really to understand and highlight the fact that students can leave our system with different pathways. The next steps could be a career, it could be technical education, it could be college. We definitely have Warren Tech, and we're building a new.
I'm going to use my principal voice.
That works better.
Good job.
And then, okay, this is better. So to continue the work that's occurring at Warren Tech, and maybe even bring back some of the other technical things that have always occurred or traditionally occurred at some schools. I know Jefferson had an automotive piece there. They had those kind of classes at the school to really think about the needs of the kids who want to go into that world and to do that and be able to maybe walk out of college, or excuse me, out of high school with a career if they are ready to go. So it's really important. And also, I think it's also important to really look to see what the other links are in the community that can help kids move in that technical direction or in construction, etc. Because I do know that one of the construction unions has a whole program in place for our kids to access early on to be able to get those skills. So those kind of things exist. We just need to make sure they're out there and that our kids who want to go that path know that that exists for them.
Keep that.
I'm sorry. That's all right. Give you some.
So in Colorado, we know that about 100 children who start in 9th grade, 79 of them are going to graduate from high school on time. 43 of them will enroll in college, and about 25 of them will graduate within 6 years. And we can do a better job with all those students who are not going to necessarily be going to college right away after graduation, and those who try to go and decide, maybe that's not the way I would like to go. That's about 75% of our children. So what can we do differently? How do we give them pathways to be successful and become citizens and engage and start companies and start being part of the community and adding to the economic fabric of our economy? So when I was at Wheat Ridge High School, a group of us worked with Career Connect program, which was the Denver program that started under the gentleman of Joe Sabo. And it's similar to what CareerWise is now, but the whole program was set up to bring children through high school to place them into different areas of industry, from finance to manufacturing and other areas. And that program, we kind of copied a little bit, a couple of great teachers over at Wheat Ridge, Jen Marquez and Jane, and I'm blanking on her last name, but they started Career Explore, which took our children who had lost hope, who saw no viable way out from where they were, to actually get involved in a career. And that included the assisted living area. There's now a CNA program going on there. They also got in hospitality. And my own son got involved with the CareerWise program, which is the state level program, and he was involved in an advanced manufacturing apprenticeship program. So I think there's lots going on, and we can start percolating together across the state and making viable pathways for all of our children.
So, you know, not every child wants to go to college, not every child will go to college, and having available pathways for them is definitely very important. Warren Tech is a great example. I think the district is doing a great job with Warren Tech South coming online, hopefully sooner rather than later, will help those students down there. I mean, other things that the district can do, you know, team up with other industries in Colorado. I did get an email, you know, from my son's preschool about, you know, a United Airlines, you know, aviation career forum that they were doing, you know, to kind of show students that they could, you know, have careers in aviation, you know, teaming up with trade unions around the state. You know, if you can build a house, you've already got a career ahead of you. You know, giving credit for apprenticeships, you know, ultimately just reaching out into the community and some of the bigger sectors of the community that students can get involved in and that the district can help, you know, push them along into was something that I think we should explore more.
So it is my vision that all students in Jeffco see their future through college, career, and community readiness. I'm a really strong believer in Jeffco generations, and I, both because I've been engaged in this work in higher ed for the last 20 years, and because I see the impacts on my own kids as they have transitioned into project-based and really in deep engaged learning, how much that has changed their perspective on and thoughts about themselves as students, themselves as members of their community.
I think that that will translate into being able to provide additional opportunities, whether that's through internships and apprenticeships, whether that's thinking about gap years or volunteer service, thinking about the different ways in which, not just for industry, for career and technical education, but also for community engagement, also for ways in which we can connect our students to the nonprofit sector and to human services that will make them feel connected to the community challenges and assets around them. And that all of these things will create students that, once they're engaged in their own learning, we know attendance is better in school, that graduation rates are better, and that we are creating and helping to form individuals that are going to contribute meaningfully in their communities.
I'm starting, so I'm just gonna wait.
The order for the next question is Mr. Applegate, Ms. Schooley, Ms. Miller, Ms. Chavez-Lee. Question is, thank you, you listen to the news lately? All right. Sorry about that. If you listen to the news lately, the number one polling topic of concern to parents is school safety. Several questions were submitted on this subject, and they were all the same. Here's the question. Do you support arming teachers and/or other school staff? We'll start with Mr. Applegate.
So I think teachers already have enough on their plate that they don't need to have that tossed into their laps as well. So I would say that, no, I don't think teachers should be armed in the schools.
Ms. Schooley?
Nope.
Ms. Miller?
Absolutely not. No.
She said absolutely not. Without a microphone. Ms. Chavez-Lee?
No, I do not. But I do support us continuously improving our school safety efforts within Jefferson County Schools.
Do we have a problem with another microphone again?
We think we do.
No, we
I
were
don't
just
know.
kind of answering
We don't
quickly,
even know if
so-
we do or not, actually.
No, it's working fine.
Oh, see,
I think it was just a quick answer.
Feel free to just leave it out.
All right.
we never use it.
Move on to the next question here. I think this might be the last question.
Oh,
No?
no. Yeah, just
It is the last.
I'm like, no, there's 20 more. Just stay here all night.
One plus closing.
And the order will be as follows. Ms. Schooley, Mr. Applegate, Ms. Chavez-Lee, and Ms. Miller. How should Jeffco ensure we attract and retain great education staff in Jeffco? And do you support pay for performance for teachers?
All right. I think that there are a few ways that we attract and retain qualified and wonderful educators in Jeffco. The first one is by continuing to move forward with a district that has a culture of respect and appreciation for our teachers and support staff in schools. And I think it's critically important, one, that that gets translated through a priority in the budget and to continue to push forward with competitive pay for educators so that we can have people that actually can afford to live and work in the same district, which would be awesome, and not have to have a second or third job. I do not support pay for performance. I think maybe it's a matter of the way that it's the wording of it, but to me, it makes an assumption that if only there was a financial incentive, then teachers would just try harder, and that they would maybe make it better because they're just not trying hard enough to achieve the benchmarks that are set for those performance standards. So, no, I don't.
So the question was around how we obtain and retain quality educators and staff. As far as financially, ultimately it comes down to smart budgeting and being able to prioritize, salaries over some other things that might not provide as much value to the education of our students. As Dr. Glass showed in his slide there earlier, the staff and the educators seem to support the current direction of Jefferson County School District. I think it was around 60% or so support the direction. So they seem to support the district, but do they feel supported? Are they supported not just financially, but are they having enough prep time for their classes? Are they feeling like the board and the community are on their side to help them with their jobs? I know there's strong PTAs in different schools, and that helps a lot. But some schools don't have as a strong PTA for whatever reason. So how do you make sure that the staff and the educators feel supported, not just financially, but within their school, within their community? And I think that's something that comes down from the district level.
Sure. How should Jeffco ensure we attract and retain great education staff at Jeffco? And do you support pay for performance for teachers?
So, as was mentioned earlier, we really do still need to continue to try to meet other districts around us. Salary schedule is really important because we lose a lot of really good teachers for that reason. So that's a really important thing to do, to attract our best teachers and have them stay here. Sometimes they leave and they're sad about it because they really love Jeffco, but financially they need to make that choice. I do not support pay for performance for teachers for a couple of reasons, and kind of doing some research on that. It can be pretty time consuming and expensive to develop it. It doesn't really ensure that the best teachers stay at our most impacted schools. Actually, school climate is the more important factor in that, seeing that and experiencing that personally. And then also, it can cause really financial instability for teachers because they're just not sure from year to year what their salary might be. I can tell you just one quick personal story. We had essentially a pay for performance for principals. The first year I was at Russell Elementary School, which was a pretty impacted school. And lo and behold, my school didn't have actually similar performance as other maybe more affluent schools. So there were several Title I principals who didn't get that bump, and it made me really sad. And another principal said to me, do they really want us to stay at our school? We work really hard. So I think it's counterintuitive in some ways.
I'm sorry.
You can.
Well, to begin with, I think that we need to be actually paying our teachers much more money, entry-level teachers that can actually come walking into this profession and make this a conscious decision to have teaching as a profession. I know my kiddos have gotten out of college and they're starting at a certain level, and I know that the teacher level starting in Jefferson County is well below where my kiddos have started. And I think we just need to make a conscious and invested decision that we're going to start our teachers at a higher level where we can attract lots of great people coming in from various different areas of study, from the history, from math, from social studies, from sciences, and have them believe that this can be a career for them. So I firmly believe in paying our teachers extremely well. In terms of pay for performance, that's a really hard one. I think, when you look at a highly impacted school and you see that teachers are doing such an amazing job, they're just lifting all boats higher. And is there a way to think about how they could be compensated? Do we pay teachers that are in high impacted schools more money because of what's going on? And what happens if they're there longer hours and they're lifting those children? I'm really torn on that because they're just doing such an amazing job, and I feel that they should in some way be rewarded. So I vacillate on that one, frankly, because I do believe it is a professional career and that people should be, at least the teams of those teachers and those communities should be, some pool of money should be available for that team of teachers and that team of that community. that does great work for our children that are impacted.
Candidates, I want to thank each of you for answering these questions. We're going to have 1 minute closings here in just a minute, but I want to thank you for your time and your commitment to this district. It was very impressive. Dr. Glass, thank you very much for your time and your comments as well. It was very much appreciated.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes?
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I'm curious to see what Mr. Applegate thinks about the paper performance.
Did I miss you?
No, I forgot the answer.
No, that's okay.
No, I'm sorry, we're not going to take questions from the audience at this point. I'm so sorry about that. We will have a couple, you can talk to people after the forum if you'd like to. We will have, Dr. Glass, there were a couple questions submitted for him, so after you've done your closing statements, I will bring Dr. Glass back up and he'll answer your questions.
And you will be on a very strict time, no. The order for closing remarks, this is 1 minute apiece. Mr. Applegate, Ms. Schooley, Ms. Miller, Ms. Jefferson, in that order. Mr. Applegate.
Thank you again to the Jeffco PTA, and thank you for everyone in attendance. As I said kind of in my opening statement, I came from modest means, and a strong public education system was the key to my success. I've served on many nonprofit boards with a focus on arts and education. And I plan to bring this experience as well as a logical and balanced approach to the board, and will actively reach out to see all sides of the issues. In addition to the school closings I talked about in my opening statement, I've broken down my priorities into ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. A for academic excellence, B for balanced perspective, C for children and community centered, 1 for safety and security, 2 for fiscal accountability, and 3 for equity and choice. And these can all be found and explained in much greater detail on applegateforjeffcokids.com. So if you believe that the board needs a scientific approach that's willing to work with anyone and everyone, please vote for Rob Applegate. Thank you.
Ms. Schooley?
I believe strongly that Jeffco kids deserve leadership that is focused on solutions, not solely on problems. I have a history of see something, do something to make communities stronger across the course of my adult life. I have reached out to elected officials, community leaders, civic groups, current board members, faith-based leaders, both for my professional life to build collaborations and to build bridges across perspectives, and to make sure that we're bringing the very best forward, the best ideas forward for our kids. I want to keep the district moving forward with Jeffco Generations and the content and life skills that students need for college, career, and community readiness from early childhood through graduation. I'd be honored to represent District 3 and the Jeffco Public Schools on the Board of Education. Thank you.
Again, thank you for PTA for hosting this event. I hope this has been informative and helps you think through what you want from your school board members, because we're accountable to you for your children's education and impact on their future. My focus is going to be on academic achievement, expanding opportunities for children, and fiscal clarity about cost management, and better pay for our teachers. And we are facing an extremely competitive world, and we know the best chance for our children to succeed and thrive is to have access to great education. That's why I'm running. You can learn more about my priorities, which are listed in both Spanish and English on my website, Jeffco, Note for Jeffco students, and I'll also post my responses to various surveys that we receive from various organizations, and I hope that my compatriots will also post their responses. If you want somebody on the board who's knowledgeable, independent, determined, and sensible, who will never give up on our kids and their future, I ask for your vote on November 5th. Thank you.
So I'm reminded that public education is so important to our country, and it doesn't mean just getting our kids ready to become economically self-sufficient. It includes things like unifying our diverse population. It includes things like making sure our new immigrant kids know what it's like and what a citizen should be as they become part of America. It is also a really important part to really improving social conditions. Finally, Jeffco has become diverse and is 1 in 4 kids now are Hispanic Latino kids. There's never been a Latino school board member. I would be honored to be the first one, and I hope that you can support me, and I will do best work I can for all students. Thank you.
Microphone if you don't mind.
All right, can you hear okay? Here are 2 questions that were given to Dr. Glass. With the increase in technology, stay here just for a moment. With the increase in technology and AI and robots in the workplace in the upcoming years, what ways will Jefferson County Schools be preparing students for these tremendous changes in the workforce? Will Jefferson County Schools be able to continue to increase the technology knowledge and help our children prepare for a new workforce landscape?
Yes, is the answer to that. An integral part of the Jeffco Generation's vision is embracing technology as a tool to catalyze learning. Thanks to our voters with 5A, we're going to be able to implement a one-to-one device program from 5th grade and up, as well as we already invest in having devices for earlier grades. We really think to prepare our students for a technological world, an increasingly technological world when they graduate and enter the workforce. We have to create learning environments that are also technology rich. I think about my grandfather, who was a Kentucky tobacco farmer, who literally started his career walking behind a mule to plow a field. By the end of his life, he was driving his Chevrolet pickup truck on an interstate highway system. So that's how much change in one lifetime that we can see. And when we think about the kids that are just starting our schools now, what will the world be like in 80, 100 years? How much change will they see? I think that change is going to be faster and more automated, all those things that question asked. And Jeffco Public Schools, thanks to our voters and the commitment to use technology as a catalyst for learning, we aim to prepare our students for that future.
Thank you. All right, another one that over and over and over again, the same question. What is the current Jeffco School District policy on arming school staff? And I'd love to answer this as a member of the Safety and Security Task Force, but I'll let you do.
We do have armed staff, but they are trained school safety officers and school resource officers who are on loan to us from our law enforcement partners. We do not disclose where they're deployed or what their patterns are because making available our security protocols and systems makes them easier to defeat. We have not gone to the point of having concealed weapons, nor do we have any plans to do something like that. We want to make sure that if there are weapons around our schools, they're in the hands of someone who's designated to have that, who has the ongoing and continued training to use that weapon in the horrible event that it is required. And just to close out, I did want to point out some gifts that we brought for our candidates. They each have 2 books. One is called What School Could Be by Ted Dinter-Smith. That's a book that we gave all of our principals last year. The second is In Search of Deeper Learning. So thank you for modeling so well. Just some light reading. And I also just want to, again, express deep gratitude and appreciation for all of you. Your answers were really all wonderful. You did an amazing job. And I'm sort of a hack semi-pro musician. I know that when the time of the performance is multiplied many times over for the preparation that it takes to be here. So I know you spent a lot of time thinking about your answers, worrying and driving in the car and in the shower and at breakfast that followed you around and thinking about tonight and all of the events that you're going to. So again, we're just incredibly grateful that you're running. And we're also grateful for your responses tonight.
I'm grateful that I wrote a script. So please join me once again in thanking all of our candidates tonight. Our moderator, Dave Thomas. Our superintendent, Dr. Glass. Our principal, Mr. West. The student who had to go home, who was voluntold because she had homework. And our Jeffco PTA board volunteers. Now, you're all welcome to stay for a few minutes if you'd like to mingle with the candidates and Dr. Glass just outside the auditorium. The Jeffco PTA board is going to stay in here and we're going to conduct our business as fast as we possibly can. You're welcome to stay and watch this if you'd like.
that.